Good day, everyone, and welcome back to the Dr. Coach Show. I'm your host, Dr. Coach Danny Pueblos, and today I have my good friend and mental performance consultant with the Cleveland Guardians, my good friend and friend of the show, Martin Rasumoff. How you doing, Martin?
Hey, Danny, how are you? Good to see you. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I know, we're right in the middle of the baseball season. Things are getting heavy right now, kind of going into that second half of the season. And so I want to appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with me and everyone else listening.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation. So it's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, as we talked about before, I like to bring people on here who have experience in different fields, especially in sports. Especially how you and I have similar backgrounds in mental performance. And I've had a couple of guests, colleagues of ours in the field in the past. But I don't want to stop there. I want to bring different perspectives because everyone has their own different journeys, right? Everyone has their own different outlooks and perspectives and experiences, in what we do as far as in the world of mental performance. And so that's why I wanted to bring you on. Obviously, you're working with a professional ball club and organization, with the Cleveland Guardians, and so I just want to kind of give everyone a sense about kind of where you started, like how you got started, and what that looked like, and kind of like what it was that motivated you to work in the field.
Yeah, well, I think I've always had a passion for sports.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, I used to play especially soccer, tennis, and I was always outdoors, really, really like that. And then when I finished high school and I had to study something, I went to study psychology, right? So at that point, I was 18 years old. I hadn't heard anything about sports psychology, but one of the optional classes that I had on my school was sports psychology. So I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. I'm gonna try to see what this looks like. And I loved it, So that was probably 2012 or so. And I finished college in 2013. And then I was like, yeah, I want to do more. I want to learn more about sports psychology. So, in Argentina, the field is pretty small still. So I said, I need to go to the US to get my master's. So I literally Googled sports psychology in the US. I found some pretty cool schools. There was one in the San Francisco Bay Area. I wanted to be I had been there before. And it was oh, how cool would it be to be in San Francisco. So I went to JFK University, had a really, really good time, learned a lot. And yeah, that's how I got started. So it was pretty maybe unusual, but it was a really good start.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you live, you're a fellow Californian like myself for a little bit, at least for a little bit.
Yeah.
I know back, because I know you said you got your master's around that time. The field in the grand scheme of things, as far as the sub disciplines in psychology, it's still in its infancy,
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of growth that's still continuing to go to continue on. But back then, I don't know if you had a similar experience than I did, but I remember because I did my bachelor's degree in regular general psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember when I had a very similar experience myself when I was in my high school class. My psychology teacher taught to us about the different areas in psychology, and one of them was sports psychology. I was like, oh wow, I love sports. Sports. I love helping people. So why not go after it? So, but I remember when I was looking into master's programs, that's kind of around the time a lot of people start to specialize, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear did anyone kind of tell you, or do you have any doubts about should I, even though we were both fascinated about the field, and then we saw, we understand the importance of it. I know for me, at least, I don't know if you had any similar experience, but I have people like telling me like, it's not, a very common field. It's not, you don't get a job, and you know, but and I remember hearing that, even from like family members are like, "Hey, you sure you want to do that? Why don't you just go into clinical psychology? There's a job there." But I'm like, I don't really want to work with like clinical issues. I want to work in sports. But like, did you ever experience anything like that, like around that time?
Well, yeah, I mean, I so I knew there was like a small community here in Argentina. I didn't know how it worked in the US, but I know there's more people there, so it's probably even more difficult. But at the same time, I think it was one of the first time in my life that I was sure that I was passionate about something. And I was like, even like if it doesn't work out later, I would still like have a good time and have like do like a really incredible experience living abroad, and see how it goes. And one thing that I realized is that it's still not super easy to like find jobs in the industry. Absolutely. But it's a lot up to you. Like if you have the passion to go for it, then you have a much better chance when you just like maybe you have a side job and I don't know what to do. Like when you go all in for that, then I think it's a better chance. And like that's what I was looking for, to go all in and see what I had. And then if I fail, well, okay, at least I tried. Yeah. But I did it because I was sure that this was what I wanted to do at the time. So I'm really happy that I went that path.
Yeah, I love that. And that's absolutely right. It's, and it's something that I've had to like kind of do myself as far as like focusing on certain aspects of my career, because I was doing so much at one point. I'm like, I'm spreading myself out too thin. So that's definitely great advice you've given there. And I'm glad you took that leap of faith. That's what it is. It's a leap of faith, because we don't know, like you didn't know, what kind of jobs were out there. And yeah, you're right. Even to this day, it's still a challenge to find jobs. The job opportunities are continuing to grow, but it's still not, like that significant. So, but it's definitely getting there. So, now going back to, once you completed your schooling, so like what steps did you take to start your professional experience and eventually like work your way up to now working with the Cleveland Guardians baseball organization?
So it's a pretty cool story, because like my experience is probably going to be different than most of other people. The main reason is that I'm still not an American citizen. So I had a student visa. And so when you're a student, then after you finish school, you have 3 months to find a job. If you don't find a job in 3 months, then you have to leave. In sports psychology, it's not easy at all to find a job 3 months after you graduate, right? So what I did at the time was, first of all, I emailed around 800 athletic directors, coaches, like anything you can imagine from D1 and D2 schools in the US. Most of them didn't get back to me. I got some responses. All of them were, sorry, no. Yeah. But one thing that I did that was very, I think, smart at the time was to go to the sports psychology conference to ask, probably like a month before I graduated. And there I met Oscar Gutierrez. He's a good friend of mine. He was working with Cleveland at the time, and they didn't have an opportunity back then when I graduated. So didn't find a job at the time, had to go back to Argentina. But like almost a year later, I heard back from him. I stayed in touch with him, but he reached out and told me like, hey, there's this opportunity for an internship in the Dominican Republic, baseball. Are you interested? And like at the time, I didn't know anything about baseball. Being from Argentina, baseball is not very big here. So I had
It's
no
football, right? I mean,
yeah,
football,
yeah,
everything out
football.
there.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
well, like non-American football, because
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere else in the world, it's football except here in soccer, But yeah,
Right.
especially Argentina, that's a big football country.
Exactly, exactly. So I was like, I'm gonna go to a country that I've never been to. Like I have no idea what's in there. I have no idea about baseball. Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, something told me that I had to take advantage of this opportunity, and I did. And I got the internship, and like it was great. After the first year of that internship, I got hired full time. So with the Indians back then, now we're the Guardians. But like I think it was incredible because at the end of the day, like what I thought was that I tried so hard, like I emailed everybody, wasn't like didn't get any luck there, but at the same time it paid back because like I ended up getting something and like a really good thing. So I think it pretty much described the effort that I put and the passion that I was talking about at the beginning. Because otherwise I could have easily stopped like after a few responses. Oh no, well maybe I have to switch and go somewhere else. But I decided to stay. So I think that's actually why I got the job.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I love that approach. I've taken the same approach in the past too, as far as like just mass emailing everyone or getting on LinkedIn, and just messaging people. And like when I mentor people and try to give them some advice who are trying to get a job somewhere, I tell them to do that, and like you said, the majority of response, if you do get a response, sometimes you get nothing, right? As you
Exactly.
know, it's probably most times you get nothing. The majority is probably like 98%, 99% are going to be no's or no response at all, but it just takes that one. It just takes that one, and something's going to stick. It's a numbers game, right? To where it's like when I used to work in sales, one thing that we were taught is like, you can't be afraid of the no. You can't be afraid of rejection, right? Because it's like without the no's, you won't get the yeses, right? And you're a testament to that. Like, you're a prime example of that. It's like when you're emailing these people and these different, directors and teams, like what was it like more or less like, what was it that you would tell them?
It's funny because I didn't even talk about money at the time. Like I was just looking for an opportunity. Like, hey, I just graduated from JFK. I'm looking for a job. Maybe like I can be helpful. I offer kind of my services, told them what I did because many of them didn't even know what sports psych was.
That's a hell of a challenge in itself.
Exactly. So again, like when I was getting a no after no, or not even like an email back, I was like, oh man, like, what am I going to do? Like, did I make the right choice? But, like I was saying before, at the same time, I was very in peace with myself because I knew that I was like, most of my classmates, for example, weren't doing this, like, and I have like, there are some that are still on the field, but most of them are not. And maybe they're not because it wasn't easy to find something. And I think like, something that we actually teach to the athletes is that they have to be resilient. And I think that's what helped me because, like I said, like, if after the first few no's, it's very easy to say like, oh, well, I look for something else. But at the same time, when you keep trying, there are jobs there. There are jobs. And I think, again, like going to a sports psychology conference, trying to do some networking, trying to meet people. I think that's how you can actually like find something, like, because if you don't try, then it's not going to just like the job is not going to be waiting for you. Yeah. You need to go after it. So I think that's the key.
Preach, brother, preach. It's so true. It's so true, and a lot of people think that like opportunities are just going to land in their lap. They're just going to come to them without doing the work, and you might have those very rare occasions where you just happen to stumble upon someone or some job opportunity, but it just, for the most part, you have to be able to put the work in and to, do like what you did and reach out to all these people and put yourself out there and taking that leap of faith where you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you, even like if you're going to get one yes, but that's a leap of faith that, and I think it's not only applies for this field, but any industry, right? I mean,
Yeah.
anyone wants to get an opportunity or experience, like they have to, like I just had, I've had actors and musicians on my show before, and they said the same thing. They had to put in the grind. It's tough. They had to go through all this stuff to get to where they are today, but it wasn't easy. But you have to do it. It's a part of the process and part of the journey. And I'm glad, you're just another voice to share that. We're seeing a common theme here, right? Of how important that work and that dedication is, and to eventually do what you want to do, as far as your career goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I think that if you actually it's scary, no doubt, it's scary because it's really hard when you don't when you're not sure and it's not as easy. Mm-hmm. Then I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? But I think that if you really have the passion and if you're sure about it, then you have to go for it because it's going to be there. You have to keep trying and then it's going to be there. But you have to have the passion. Otherwise, it's the most likely you're just going to end up going somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you said, man. It's a great message. So thank you for sharing that. So you definitely have a very unique experience, and that's why I like to bring on different people, even in the same industry, because each and every one of you, my guests on the show, have had different journeys to where now you're working in professional baseball, and even now you're for those of you who don't know, as far as baseball goes, there's a major league level where those are the ones you see on TV, right? And then you have the minor league system that trickles down, and a lot of times you'll have minor league programs or ball clubs in Latin American countries. And Martin, you have a lot of experience, as you mentioned, working in the Dominican Republic. So talk to me about that. Talk to me how that came about and your experience working with these athletes who are just starting out.
Yeah, I think it's a very unique experience because the athletes who are there, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, they come from very humble homes. Even from they're not used to maybe having their 4 meals or at least 4 meals of the day. Some of them they didn't even have a bathroom in their house. So it's a very, very challenging opportunity that they have. They have a lot of pressure because their families depend on them, so it's not that it's just your career. Well, it's their career, but if they don't do well, it's not oh, okay, so too bad for them. No, it's also their families, so the pressure that they have is pretty big. And we have athletes from Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, of course, DR, but at the same time, you can see how they, are big family guys. They really enjoy being there. One thing that they have learned is appreciating being there, having all those meals. We are at the DR Academy, and the quality of the food that we have is amazing. So these are the things that
I've been there before. It's good food.
Yeah. So those are things that they have never experienced before for most of them. So it's also hard to, adjust and adapt to this whole new environment in which you have all your needs available to you there. You get to sleep well with AC. You have a fantastic facility. The fields are really, really good. So not all the athletes can handle that. So I think some of them are oh, okay, I got here, I've done my part, I signed professionally, I'm done,
Yeah.
And I think that the ones who actually succeed are the ones that no, this is not my final goal. I want to get to the major leagues.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that they kind of discover along the way. Because at first they all say, yeah, I wanna play in the major leagues. But you can tell when they get there, some of them really, really want to do that. And some of them are like, oh, okay, I'm fine here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a whole different experience. I mean, that's a whole different challenge for these players at this lower level. Because most people, like either, whether you're a fan of baseball or not, most people don't realize the struggle and the challenge that it takes for someone to work their way up in the minor league system to eventually make it to the major leagues, right? It's a challenge, even, and I've talked to, I've worked with different professional ball players, and many of them were minor leaguers, and they would tell me the different struggles they've had, like a lot of them had to get jobs in the off season because they weren't getting paid enough money,
Yeah.
And I know, there are talks going on between the minor league baseball and major league as far as addressing that and increasing salary, benefits, all that stuff, right? And I really hope that goes through because these players they deserve it, and it's ridiculous how you're a professional ball player and you're having to scrap for money, for food and for place to stay, and so hopefully that gets fixed, and because they have enough pressure, as you mentioned, of like trying to, get to the next level, work their way up the minor league system. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's such an important point.
Yeah. And like some people might think that, oh yeah, when the off season comes, they're on vacations. No, they're not. That's one of the most important times for them to actually work on their stuff. So if they have to be working on like side jobs because they don't have enough money to, like support their families, instead of be trying to get better as baseball players, like that's an issue,
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's so important that they get compensated as they should. And at the same time, it's like a thing that they have to not worry about while they can take care of themselves. But yeah, it looks pretty. It looks very pretty. But especially in the minor leagues, there are so many challenges that, like not everybody can handle that.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm glad you're bringing it up because, it's good to bring awareness to it, and hopefully that changes as far as, helping these players out, especially, if they have families, like, in the DR, you have all these guys who, I mean, you tell me, like, from what I understand, what I've heard in the past, baseball is all they have. Like that's their ticket out. That's their ticket to help give, and provide for their families. So it's not just, someone who comes from a decent, background and financial status, where they have the pressure of like, performing well and all that. But now you add on to that with, hey, like I need food on the table for myself and my family. I need, they rely on me. And that's a whole other, like, just, dog that they have to worry about. And this adds so much more pressure. And that's why I feel like us as professionals and mental performance are so important, right? To help them stay focused, help them, get that plan and help them figure out, okay, what's the best way to approach my baseball career and, and also my personal life, because you need to be able to balance both, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And like I really admire these guys because again, they go through so much that, like you were saying, it's not easy to be focused on just playing baseball. And they have so many other things that they have to deal with, that like one of the most typical things that they go through is that when they have to be performing on the field and they have so many issues off the field. I mean, that can happen for a lot of athletes, but like these might be like very, very serious issues that they can have and they need to handle. So it's like, like I think one of the top 3 topics that I get to work with them is like compartmentalizing the things that maybe are detractors when they are on the field to their performance, and like separating what's going to help them on the field to what is not. And it's not like, oh no, forget about it, that's not important. No, it's like put it on the side when you're performing, and then maybe you can take care of it after you're off the field, you know?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. It's across sports at every level. And I would say, especially like when you get to the higher levels, actually, yeah, I mean, you have it at every single level because there's always something going on, whether it's like youth, high school, you have like, high school stuff and classes, all that stuff, even college, like athletes I've worked with, they're having to deal with their college classes, and sometimes they have a part-time job, and plus they're playing their sport. When you get to the professional levels, the higher levels, they have families, they have all this stuff. And like, I know, like for me, one phrase I have my athletes use is park it. And I love the point you brought up of like, it's not like we're telling them to forget about it. Right. Because even though we try to forget something, like we say, don't think about that. Like if I were to tell you, don't think about a pink elephant, Martin, don't think about a pink elephant. What are you thinking about? A pink elephant. Right?
Yeah.
So even though you're telling yourself, don't think about it, it's still there. So like you said, what I tell you is like park it in your locker, leave it outside in your car or whatever. It's not going anywhere. It'll be there when you get back. Trust me. Hey, whatever problem or issue you have outside of your sport, outside of baseball, it's going to be there. Right. So until then, focus on the task at hand. Go into your sanctuary, right? Because for a lot of people, like in baseball, you tell me, but like that's their sanctuary, that's their passion, their love, right? And then when it's time to go back, then you could address it, right? And I tell them, I'll be there for you too if I could help you in any way to deal with your life stuff. But when it's time to perform, when it's time to go practice, train, meetings, put the focus right then and there, right? So it's kind of almost like a light switch in a sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge point, especially because, first of all, I like to ask them, like, how is that going to help you perform? Mm-hmm. Like thinking about the struggles that your family. Maybe one will say, yeah, like it gives me more motivation to want to do well. If that's the case, great. Like maybe you can keep track of that. Otherwise, please leave it off the field. And what you were saying is true, because we're not telling them to forget about it, but I think it actually, like releases the pressure a little bit when you're like, okay, it's not that I have to forget and can't take care of that. It's like, no, I can, maybe not right now, but then it's still there, and I can still work on that, talk to my family after the game. Sure. And I think that's a really important point because, okay, like you can take the time to do that, but maybe later, like if it's not going to help you perform, leave it on the side and take it back later.
Absolutely. Yeah. And every team, every athlete I've worked with, it's such a challenge for them. And I remember going through when I played sports, like having to worry about school or personal life issues, because if we're not like mentally disciplined and being able to like put that stuff aside, it's going to carry on. Like you're thinking about it. And even though you try to like just brush under the rug and just forget about it, it's still going to linger. Right. And that's why we have to come to that point of acceptance of like, okay, like I'll deal with that when I get back. Right. And then, but right now, this is what I have to do. And that goes for anyone, right? Like even for us as professionals in the field, like we have to be, careful of like, taking, our life stuff into work or even like bringing work home, so it's finding that balance. So I think it's whether it's players, coaches, the mental coaches, strength coaches, you name it, right? I think everyone can definitely learn from that. Yeah.
I think that's one of the beauty of our field, that even though if it's called sports psychology, it doesn't just apply to sports, but it's applied to life. So you can take any of these and apply to any area of your life that you want.
Sure. Absolutely. So definitely, great conversation on that. But I want to move on and talk about like, what does a typical day look like for you? Like, talk with us about, during off season, preseason, like during season. So what is it, and you don't have to get too many specifics, but like, what does a general day look like for you?
Well, first of all, let me say, Danny, that it's great because I get to be wearing shorts and a t-shirt and a hat, like being outdoors. So I would think that everybody would like to be at that place. No, but in all seriousness, I would say I like to take, especially the off or like the preseason and off season, to do more like educational stuff. So that's when we do most of our group meetings and educate them on different mental skills topics, kind of the build up part, because then during the season, it's, at least in my opinion, it's really hard for you to be talking about like a lot of education and giving them more things to worry about and to learn, especially in a group setting and in like a classroom setting. So I like to do that better during the off season or when they're not on the season. But then like during the season, I think it's more constant support of them. For example, they are very, very worried about their results. That is very common thing in especially in young athletes. So I'm there to support them like the day by day. And when I can, I have the chance to talk about different mental performance topics too that can help them to deal with what they are going through at the time. I think that's the main difference, that during the season we talk more about like what is happening right now, and then maybe the off season is more like in general and things that they can apply when they are on the season. But usually on a typical day, it's like they have practice and I'm there in practice with them outside. That's also a great place to, like be talking about what they just did, or if you've seen someone like get frustrated after like not hitting well, then you like say, hey, what happened there? And then you end up having a great mental performance conversation. And then like when the day is over, maybe we have some group meetings, and then I like to be, like I usually write some notes on the conversations that I have, and I usually like be sitting like outside, where like instead of being inside in my office, because that way they can see me there, and if one of them wants to like come sit down and talk to me, then it's easy to find me. I think it's way more difficult when like I'm inside the building and they have to go inside and like go through all the different offices that are there. So that's why I like trying to stay outside so they can see me when they go to, I don't know, to their rooms or to another place. So that's how it works.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot, as far as like making yourself available to them, right? Even though you might tell them, hey, if you need me, come visit me in my office. That might be very intimidating, right? Especially for younger players, younger individuals who like they think of an office and they're like, oh, like I don't feel comfortable. Rather than you just being out there and just saying, hey, I'm right here. So if you want to talk, we could talk here, or we could go talk somewhere else, right? But at least like, I could see how that might, make them more comfortable if you when you leave yourself open and put yourself in like in their world, right? Because if you put yourself in your world, like in the office setting, right, that might not be too comfortable for some of them. But if you place yourself as a practitioner, as a mental coach, in their world, where they are comfortable, right? I would imagine that could be, more welcoming, and they're more likely to like reach out to you if and when they need help.
Yeah, for sure. And, also like it removes the stigma of mental performance, because we just treat it as like, oh yeah, he's talking to Martin. What's like, he's just trying to get better. Now, oh, he has a problem. When you are inside the office, it's like, oh, what happened here? No one wants to, like, I don't want to be seen, so that's why I go inside. And maybe like there are times if it's something like very personal, that might be a good choice to go inside and be in a more private place.
Sure.
But otherwise, like I like when people see, and I don't see that they have an issue at all. Like it's not like it's performance. It's nothing confidential that we're talking about. It's just performance. If it's something more serious, more confidential, then yeah, we will be more private. But otherwise, I just want to normalize like players talking to me and not being seen as, oh, he has a problem.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's great. That's great. Now, speaking of that, what has been your experience as far as the players being open and buying into mental skills training? Like, do you have some that are kind of like hesitant about it? Some are more open about it. So, like, what has been your experience with the players and the coaching staff?
Yeah. I think it's getting much more normal right now, especially compared to maybe my first year. I could see some people a little bit reluctant to it, or maybe like, oh, I'm not crazy, or like, oh, I don't have any problems.
Yeah.
So one thing that we do is every year we sign around 15 to 20 players, new players, international players. And what I'm seeing with each new group is that, again, it's like, it's getting normalized. It's before like 10 or 15 years ago, it wasn't that normal to have a mental performance coach on your team. And when you had one, that was kind of the shrink, the one that fixed it, the problems. And now they are getting to see it as like, oh, like, you know, like you have a strength coach to make you stronger. You have a nutritionist to help you to eat better. You have a fundamental coach to make you better as a baseball player, and you have a mental performance coach to make you to help you with your mind. So it's not something that it's, oh, he's there to fix problems, but it's more like, no, he's here to make me get better. So there's a huge difference now with the new groups that I'm seeing, and especially after being here for 5 years, they see me all the time, and you know, like they know how it's working with me.
Yeah. That's great. I'm glad that it's becoming more normal. You know, I know I've had, you know, challenges in the past, you know, with some athletes, coaches, and how, it's, and it goes into that stigma too, where it's like, oh, I'm not crazy. I don't have anything wrong with me, you know? And that's one thing too. And there's like a misconception about what we do is that, you know, some people believe that we just help people who have problems, right? Mm-hmm. Which we definitely can, right? We definitely can help them with whatever, you know, anxiety, confidence issues, and, you know, and so forth. But, you know, what I tell my clients or potential clients or athletes I work with is like, we don't just help you with problems. We, you know, say that you say, hey, like, I'm good. Because when I used to work with a sports agency, I would meet with these, you know, these ball players every so often, every week, every other week. And they'll tell me, hey, coach, you know, I'm good. And I'm okay, perfect. Now let's keep building, right? Let's keep growing. Let me teach you some more skills, right? And that's what, like, especially I would imagine, like, during, and this, I take the same approach when I work with teams in the past. As far as like in the preseason, like that's the time to do the group work, teach them this stuff. So by the time that season comes around, you're just, you know, you're dealing with if there's any issues going on, right? But even if not, you're sharpening those skills, right? They know what you're working on, because especially, you know, they're so busy getting ready for the next opponent, right? Because baseball, you're playing all the time. That there's not too much time for like those group works, mental skills training, right? And so that's why, like, you know, I tell them, like, if you don't have anything, you know, any issues going on, awesome. Okay, let's strengthen your mental game, right? It's like, and I like how you talked about, just as mental coaches, we're just another one of your coaches. Where there's a dietary coach, there's a strength coach. It's just like, you know, say they reach, you know, a certain max on their bench press, or they reach a certain, you know, weight goal, right? Do they just stop and just say, oh, I'm good, you know? No, right. They try to get better, right? They try to say, how can I maximize my performance? What else can I do, right? And it's the same thing with mental skills and with the mental game, is that there's always ways to grow, and just continue to sharpen that, right? And because we want to, you know, I think one of our goals as mental coaches is to prepare our athletes as much as possible. So, you know, so that whatever situation comes their way, they're ready, right? They're as ready as they possibly can be, and not wait until stuff happens to try to put out fires, because that's when they're not level headed and they're freaking out, right? That's why I think taking that proactive approach is key. And talking about different like adverse situations, like in baseball, like what are some adverse situations? Like, I mean, you tell me. I mean, I know, like in the past, I've played baseball for several years too, but a big one is like getting into slumps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going 0 for 3, and you have one bad at bat can turn into a bad game can turn into a bad week, and just snowballs from there, right? Have you seen that?
Yeah, all the time. And it's funny because like I get players say like, oh, I'm driving myself crazy. I went 0 for 4 in 2 consecutive games. And I'm like, so what? Like, like even in the major leagues, they after 20 at bats, they don't get a single hit. And like I think that what I try to tell them, like what defines them is not how they are when they're good, because everybody can be smiling and like can keep doing good when they're in a good spot. What defines you is like how you are when you're in a slump. Mm-hmm. Are you gonna be the guy that hammers his helmet like that is with a very negative body language?
Yeah.
Okay, if that's the player you are, then probably you need to change something. Yeah. But I think also when you're having like a more positive attitude towards it, then there's a better chance that you will turn it around. So that's what they actually need to understand.
Sure. Yeah. Because how often do you see these players, especially in baseball, where they go 0 for 4, then another 0 for 4, and then it just gets, and we see that, I think, like Mike Trout, right? One of the best players in the league, is he went through a tough slump earlier in the season, and we're talking about Mike Trout here. So that's what I tell my guys, like, if these, all-time great athletes are having these slumps and they're going, 0 for 4, and they have a tough outing, like why expect yourself to be perfect, right? It's not realistic. And so, the key here is to first recognize when things aren't going well, and to put a stop to it, and to not allow that to continue on, right? And that's where these mental skills comes in, to give them better control, right? Control their thoughts and emotions, to help kind of get their self back. And I completely agree with you, and how I want to see. Yeah, you're right. It's good. I tell my teams this all the time. It's one thing. I want to see you being a leader. It's easy to lead when things aren't going, when things are going well, right? It's easy to lead when you're winning, when you're having a great game, when you're going, 3 for 4, 4 for 4, great outing, and team's winning, right? But I want to see what you do when things aren't going well. Right. When you're going 0 for 4, when your team's losing, when your team is going through a losing slump, how do you respond? Because that's the indication of a true leader, the ones who step up and not only help themselves as individual players, persevere and be resilient, but also help their teammates and the collective, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you bring up a really good point in terms of the awareness, because like these guys are very young and they still don't know themselves. So I know before you were talking about even like, okay, like when you're doing well and you're, oh no, I'm good, I'm gonna, like I don't need any help. Okay, like can you recognize what you're doing well? Because it's very like a human nature to focus on the mistakes, on the things that we need to improve, and that's important too, of course. But I think it's going to bring even more success when you actually can build off the things that you're doing well, so you can keep doing them and continue to be successful. And those are things that I really need to be repeating and telling these guys, because it's very easy for them to get caught up in the moment and like, oh no, everything's going well. So thank you for your help, but I'm good right now. And they need to understand how they can keep getting even better when they're doing well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours about that stuff, man. There's so much, and that's why I feel that our field is in the appreciation for what we do is going to continue and to grow, and that's why people who are getting started in the industry I think they're going to be in a good time because, opportunities are going to grow. And so speaking of that, when you have people, like say that you have someone listening to this who is thinking about having a career in the field of sports psychology or mental performance, what is some advice that you would give them, like to get going, to get started, or at least to start on that path?
Yeah, I would say maybe related to what I said before, but to keep going for it, because it's very easy to get discouraged by like not finding something. But if you truly think that this is your passion, I think that it's very important to keep trying and keep sending emails, trying to connect with people. I think now with like the technology that we have, and like sending an email to even someone, like I know cases that like just writing an email to a mental performance coach, like, hey, can I talk to you to learn more about the field? And most of the time, I think you're gonna get a yes, because we as like mental coaches want the field to get bigger, and our nature is to help people. So I think that sometimes where you're not sure about it, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, it's very easy to find people online. And I think that in most cases, they are very open to giving feedback and like orientation to it. And I think that's the way to go, like trying to connect with as many people as you can. Use LinkedIn, use social media to find colleagues or coaches or whatever. But I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. Great advice, man. Yeah. And you gave a lot of great advice during our talk, but yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And that's why, like you and LinkedIn, like you and I connected there and we started talking, and like that's where stuff happens. I've had so many opportunities just from LinkedIn, just talking to people, networking, posting stuff, being active, and setting up those informational interviews like you talked about, like just talking to these people, right? And like not only does that, and I think this can apply for any industry, any career, not only like when you set up these informational interviews with these professionals or people like employers, managers, directors, right? Not only does it get your questions answered, right? Like you say, you have a list of like 10 questions that you want to ask them, right? Not only does it get your questions answered, but it puts you in front of them. And and especially when you communicate to them, like, hey, I'm looking to get experience in the field. And so like, whether it's at that time, or down the line, like, and with your experience, they might say, hey, I remember I talked to that person.
Exactly.
And, let me see if they're interested, right? Let me see that we have an opening or we have an internship or something, right? Let me see if they're open to it. And then that's where it happens. But that situation doesn't happen unless you put in the work, right? Unless you reach out, unless you're putting yourself out there, talking to people, networking, attending these conferences like the Ask conference, right? And just talking, and that's where the magic happens, right? It's not going to just come in and just fall into your lap like we hope it would. You have to make your own luck, right?
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
So, Martin, it's been a pleasure, my brother. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with me today. So, you have a lot of stuff to give, a lot of good insight. If someone wanted to get in contact with you or follow you, what's the best way to do that?
All right. So I have my website, which is rasumoffconsulting.com. I'm also on Instagram, Rasumoff Consulting. I'm trying to get better at posting, so I'm getting there. I'm working.
Go follow him, guys. If you have Instagram, follow him.
Yeah. No, that would be awesome. But yeah, you can also find me on LinkedIn if you want to get in contact with me. My email is martin_rasumoff@hotmail.com. Please shoot me an email, a text, whatever, and more than happy to connect with people. Like that's why I love connections. So thank you so much, Danny, for the opportunity and for having me here.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking the time out again. I know anyone listening can definitely gain a lot of value from what you had to offer today. And, I look forward to seeing you grow and seeing all the impact that you're going to have in the field and being in the face of what we do, and thank you for doing what you do. And I appreciate you for coming on and We'll be talking to you soon, huh?
Yeah, for sure. And likewise, thank you for all the work that you do on the field, and it's amazing, brother. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that'll do it for this conversation. Thank you again for my guest, Martin. If you like what you're listening to, what you're seeing, give that subscribe button to click. Tell your friends, tell your family. Thank you so much for listening in. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you on the next one. Take care, y'all.